Good evening, Clint, and our viewers. Tonight we have a very, very special program. Those who had watched the Bathurst 1000 last weekend would be in an endurance frame of mind. And that is exactly what's happening this coming weekend at Killarney with the annual 9-hour race. And thanks to Gunter Drotsky and GNA Promotions, there's also an amazing classic almost revival going on this weekend on Friday and Saturday. Even the circuit has gone back 50 years. Entrance to the circuit is only going to cost you R2, which is fantastic. And well, as you can see in the background, one of the men who intend winning the 9-hour is Nick Adcock. But for those who don't know, Clint, we also have an international star present tonight.
Yes, no, for sure. Good evening, Patrick, and to all the viewers. As you can see behind me, that is the international stars car, which they've raced.
But you're hiding the number. Show the number.
Yeah. Which way do I need to move? Eh? Look at that. Huh? So it's going to be an exciting show. I look forward to it, and we have quite a lineup of guests tonight. So yeah, I think let's get into it, Patrick.
Absolutely. I don't know where we should start, but we can start with Titan Historic Racing, which is what you see on that LMP3 behind you. But Byron, if you could let Colin and Greg in, I'm sure Colin will be behaving. Good evening, gentlemen. Colin Ellison and Lord Greg Thornton.
Good evening.
Good evening, Patrick.
Good evening.
Gentlemen, fantastic to see you in the Cape again. We had the privilege to, well, the last time I saw Greg Thornton in a car was in a two-seater Lola F5000 at Killarney. But in the meantime, much has happened. That car behind Clint started the whole thing now. So please introduce yourself and tell us what you've been up to lately.
Yeah, great.
Well, good evening to everybody. It is amazing to be back with you. And we can't wait to get out on this most historic of circuits. It's always incredibly fun to come back to South Africa because of the history, because of Springbok, etc., etc. You've got it deep in your veins. And so when we get invited by Colin or people to come and race their cars, it is the most amazing feeling. And I am so looking forward to it. I flew in from Sebring. I was racing at Sebring on Sunday. And I got here as quick as I could. I got here last night. And I can't wait for the festivities to begin.
We're coming up to the final Grand Prix of 2021, and it's a head-on clash between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, which is about the only highlight I can find in Formula One lately, I must be honest. What you do really looks thrilling to me, in the sense that you are a double world champion in historic Formula One. You are also the only person to have won it in the pre-78 and the post-78 category. And I believe you have just added a second USA Masters F1 championship to your collection of really impressive titles. So congratulations, first of all. And please give us a little bit of a background on what is historic Formula One. I don't think the South African viewers are too familiar with it.
Well, firstly, thank you very much for that. I have an amazing team behind me who have looked after me for many years in the F1 world. And they and the car follow me around the world. Basically, we look for championships that are exciting. The FIA World Championship is quite an amazing event. We get to race at what I would say are the most iconic tracks in the world, from Suzuka over in Japan to support races, the Canadian Grand Prix, Kota, down to Mexico City, where we've raced 3 times. We've done a support race at the Australian Grand Prix a couple of times in F5000s, not in F1s. So we're very, very lucky. And obviously all the special European races. We go to Monaco for the historic Monaco event every 2 years. But the F1 historic world is basically cars that are all 3-litre, pre-turbo, up to 1982, from the latter part of the 60s. So the first of the cars would be a Lotus 49, very famous one, probably in gold leaf colors. And Adrian Newey and numerous other people, including Colin Chapman, Clive Chapman's son, have 49s, which are special cars. And I was very fortunate to take one up the hill at Goodwood. I was allowed to do the hill climb in Clive's 49, which was a feeling second to none. And we go all the way through until the ground effect cars of the very early 80s. And likewise, I'm incredibly lucky. I always feel I take a gun to a knife fight when I get into my Lotus 91, which I see the picture is up now. As you can see, that car advertises everything. If you look carefully, you can see sex, drugs, the rock and roll. It's funny though that the FIA don't like it when we go to support races. I can leave everything on except for the cigarettes. Everything else. We covered all bases with that car. It was one of Colin Chapman's very last designs that he had an input on. It was the first car that had the amazing advert of the car upside down in a tunnel. Generates more downforce than it weighs. So therefore, in theory, it can drive along the ceiling. Something I have personally not tried to replicate. But when you get in the car, you feel like you're in a very special piece of kit.
Sure.
I think that's the best way to describe it. The V8 era, excluding the Ferraris, of course, and the Matra Legers that were running slightly different engine, and there's a couple of BRM powered cars. Everybody else has got the Cosworth V8. The sound a Cosworth V8 makes is second to none. And the Tifosi in Mexico City are the most amazing supporters of the V8 noise that comes out of a 3-liter. So put those two things together, and I think if we could ever get the F1 cars, a Masters F1 here to South Africa, it would be a day to remember in everybody's mind. But that's just a personal opinion.
No, I think it's a very valid and a very good opinion, and we would love to see that come true, because that's what a Formula One should sound like. It's a fantastic era. It's I cannot say enough about it. I certainly believe I was born in the wrong era. Those were true Formula One cars. Craig, I'm going to ask another question. I saw you sent me a lovely photograph of a March 83G. I presume that is a BMW powered car or something similar to what Sarel van der Merwe and Graham Duxbury and Tony Martin drove to victory in the Daytona 24-hour. You were involved with the Daytona 24-hour Classic, I believe?
Yeah, the reason I bought that car was, in fact, a good friend of mine and somebody that Colin knows, who unfortunately is not coming this weekend. He came up with some excuse that as he was the chief designer of the Red Bull car that he's fighting for the championship next weekend, he could be somewhere else. I can't understand it. I don't find it acceptable, and I've told him so. Adrian's very first car that he designed was that March. And I found the car in America about 10 years ago. And the story that Adrian tells, which is quite wonderful, was he was a very young designer at March. He was given the task of making a Daytona car from a gentleman known as Andrew Lanier, who was quite a famous character, or infamous, if you Google his history, well known to the feds, I'm told. But he had a very special relationship. Adrian ended up being sent over with by Robin Herd to support the car at Daytona. And at the beginning of the weekend, Adrian was the young engineer designer from the UK. And at 2:30 in the morning, when half the Lanier engineering team and mechanics walked off, he became the team manager. And at 3:30 in the morning, he went to the convenience, looked up on the big board, the light board, and saw they were running sixth with car number 88, was very happy, came out 10 minutes later, stopped off and talked to another pit crew, got down to his pit crew, everybody was jumping up and down in excitement because in that little interlude, they'd gone from 6th to 1st. They ran first in front of all the works Porsche cars for the next 4.5 hours till 20 minutes before the end, when the heavens opened, thunderstorm came down, and they lost a cylinder. The engine is actually a lightweight aluminium Chevy, 6.4 liters, pumping out around about 600 horsepower. And we have rebuilt the car as was with a lightweight alley engine. But that's Adrian's story. They came second at the Daytona, and that's the car. Its sister car, for people aesthetically remember it better, but didn't do very well, was known as the Lobster Claw car, white with big red lobster arms either side of the front wings. But the car that actually did well is that car, number 88, and came second in Daytona. And that was Adrian's very first car. So I bought it as a kind of associate of Adrian's at the time. And since owning the car in the last 10 years, Adrian and I have become good friends. And as I said, he's let us down very badly this weekend, and his excuse is unacceptable for me.
Well, I'll trust you give him a good talking to and get him here next year.
That's the plan.
Colin, if I can quickly shift to your side of the table. You are here with a very special car as well, a Chevron B19 with a real South African history, and a big Ford instead of your Alfa Romeo, which I have to talk to you about. But please, your turn. Tell us who's Colin Ellison, and what did you bring down for the weekend?
Well, first of all, if Adrian was here, we'd be drinking Red Bull, but he's not here, so we have to get our own drink. But we don't drink plays. Yeah, my Chevron B19, look, they're special. I remember the 9 hours as a young kid. The big Porsches, the big Lolas, but of course the Chevrons were giant killers in those days. And unlike Greg's cars, the Chevron doesn't have enough downforce to overcome my weight, let alone the weight of the car. But they're fantastic to drive. They're one of Derek Bennett's really special creation. And when I acquired the car, one of the first endurance races we did, actually it was the first time Greg and I met. We did the 6 hour at Belcom, and we had a lot of trouble with the car. But we did finish. I think we won our class as well. And I think through that car, Greg and I have seen each other almost every year racing. We share my cars here, and Greg invites me to share his cars overseas. So, yeah, those Chevrons are special. They're iconic cars for South Africa. They're my cars it's not the genuine car that Charlton and Hein won the Welcome 3 hour in 71. That car was actually written off in 73, and the nameplate lives on. The car was completely written off, but the nameplate, that chassis number, lives on in Sweden. My car is all Chevron, built by Ron Hand, who was the spares guy in Chevron. It's a chassis out of the rafters, and the rest of the bits are all from the parts department. Ron only finished the car in about 82 and raced hill climbs with it. It's been in South Africa for about 12 years in various hands. And so it's one of the few Chevrons that has a complete race history, including its, inverted commas, lack of accident history. If you look underneath, you can see there's been racing and hopped over curbs often, but it's never really been crashed. It's all authentic. And apart from the engine, we can't run BDG engines, are just way too expensive for us. The figure for a BDG engine rebuild is quite high before you convert and put the R in front of it. So I will run an alternative engine. So we produce about the same horsepower, and we run roughly the same tires. They're wonderful cars to drive, yeah. So we'll do that in the 1 hour. Greg will run it in the 1 hour. We'll share it in the sprint races.
Okay, then the other question, of course, your big Ford Thunderbolt. Yeah, we can debate this all night. I still say the Alfa would have been a better choice, but for some reason, people like Fords down here.
Yeah, that's a difficult question to answer. Look, I really got a soft spot for Alfas, and I love them. At one stage I had 11. I think I'm down to about 7 now. Yeah, so the oil bill gets quite expensive every month.
That's a good one. Eh?
There's fantastic classes in both historics and the Legend series up in Joburg, and the Alphas are just fantastic to drive, but you get passed down the straight because the Alphas handle better than the power they produce. So when Legends took off with the V8 series, a good supporter of mine, Keith Hinkley, through Ajib and the oil companies, he was always going to build a V8 for me, but then the series sort of fell apart. Through various reasons, but Keith had his Thunderbolt for sale, so he ended up selling it to me. It's fantastic. It's massive horsepower, 600. Or Jackie would know about 600 horsepower on 225 road legal semi slicks. It's the exact inverse of an Alpha. You got a lot more horsepower than grip, but the Alphas are almost the other way around, and they're just fun to drive. So it's a change, yeah. So you've only got one bum. You can only drive one car at a time. So you got to choose which ones to bring. Yeah.
Well, I won't hold it against you. At least you guys are here, and we really look forward to seeing both of you in action. If you don't mind hanging on in the background, I just want to bring Dr. Greg Mills in, as he is one of the men that keeps this event going, and we would like to hear. Good evening to you, sir. He doesn't want to speak to us yet.
Yeah.
I'm
There we
on.
go.
Hi, how are you?
Well, a lot more relaxed than you, I would believe.
Yeah, it's a bit challenging trying to put a few cars out for a 9 hour and then a few historic cars and try and more or less keep an event moving in the right direction. But yeah, that's what challenges are for, huh?
Well, Gunther reckons you must do the talking tonight because he's busy building cars.
I think he exaggerates.
Tell us, Dr. Mills, we are at this is a milestone event for Kalani. It's the 9 hour, it's classics, and you play no small part in the classics. I think every race has got something from Team Africa Le Mans entered into it. It's fantastic to see all these cars. Some of them are still unknowns to us. I'm still trying to figure out what the heck they are, where they come from. But Kalani is in a good place with this event.
Well, as you know, I mean, I assumed the presidency of the Western Province Motor Club, I think the third president, a couple of years ago. And my principal aim was to try and put the club in a position whereby it can get a lease extension, which of course expires at the end of next year. And we worked very hard as a club, both the professional management and the custodians of the club in the form of the senior office bearers, myself, Tim Riddell, Mark Ridgway, worked very hard to put together a good plan, a strategic plan for the club, and thus the facility going forward over the next several decades, making it an increasingly indispensable part of the fabric of motorsport, but also of the motorsport industry. You know, normally in motorsport, there's a lot of naysayers out there. There's a lot of nattering nabobs of negativism. Say that after a couple of Red Bulls. But you know, it's a sport where people often live a bit hand to mouth, and so we've got to take a pretty long view about what the club can offer the city of Cape Town and its millions of people, and that's both in economic terms as well as in terms of getting racing off the streets. And I think, in addition to that, we've had to do this at a time of COVID, so we've had to sort of strategically reorientate the club in a way that in a time that's been extremely difficult. So, but we're in a good place. The mayor's going to come and start the event. As you know, over the last year, the premier, the head of Westgrow, the head of the ruling party that is in power in the Western Cape and in the city of Cape Town, all have come to Kalani. They've all had laps around Kalani, and then we put together a strategic plan. And what we would like to do is to build this 9 hour, roughly around this date, into a perennial event in the calendar. Very tough to do this at a time of COVID because, of course, all our plans were upended by Boris Johnson's, I think it would be fair to say, overreaction to the Omicron variant a few weeks ago. And so the plan we had as a small team enthusiasts to bring out Anthony Reid and Jan Lammers and Colin Turkington, among others, as part of our team, and put out an even bigger entry, essentially got scuppered overnight. So we've had to sort of regroup and still running a couple of cars, a couple of the Ginettas. And then, of course, we've also used this as an opportunity to build around this 9-hour event, a classic event. And my hope is personally that we can leverage Killarney's status and ultimately East London's status as well as two of the very handful of tracks around the world that remain in the same outline shape as they were when they hosted Grand Prix in the 1960s. In the case of Cape Town, of course, the two Cape non-championship Grand Prix. But in the case of East London, of course, World Championship Grand Prix, most famously that nearly 60 years ago, which was the site of the BRM victory, the only BRM victory in the World Championship in 1962 with Graham Hill. So if we can run on consecutive weekends, potentially, an event of international repute around long-distance races, and also then try and build a historic formula around it. And as Greg Thornton has pointed out, this is probably the fastest growing series of racing in the world, historic racing. It's certainly the most moneyed. And we have the big advantage of a seasonal weather attraction over Northern Hemisphere countries, which is why we get swallows like Greg visiting our shores to try and defrost and enjoy our cheap wine and beer. That's a tremendous asset for us, and so we need to market ourselves accordingly, and not become a place just for a cheap holiday, but become part of an international motor racing calendar and scene where there's a lot of money to be spent. And that's really our ambition, is to turn Killarney into a major economic asset, both in terms of industry, but also in terms of visitors, so that we become an indispensable part of the fabric of the city of Cape Town, not only enthusiasts, because we want to keep the enthusiasts, but we realize that as increasingly the value of premises is determined by its commercial common sense, that we need to pivot in that way if we're going to be part of that longer term success story of the city of Cape Town. So that's what this event is about. That's what it's been about for the past several years. And we hope that one day, not too long, fingers crossed, touch wood, that COVID will not be with us anymore, and that we'll dispense with all the multitude of variants, and we'll be able to lead a normal life and be able to welcome larger numbers of visitors to our shores. But we have to keep going until that point.
I love the sound of this, because this sounds like a 9-hour in December at Killarney, a pre-78 Formula One Grand Prix in January, and an international historic classic event in February, March. That sounds great to me.
Well, I think what we've learned about motorsport facilities is that they have to be used all the time. They're not the things that used to be used once a month or twice a month on a weekend on a piece of land that was a long way away from a city centre. As cities have expanded, and Cape Town's no exception in this regard, these facilities have become part of the inner stuffings of the city in terms of their geography. So we need to use them all the time to make them pay for themselves. And that's the lesson out of motorsport facilities in the UK. If you're not running testing sessions, you're running track day events. And if you're not running track day events, you're running customer driving experiences. And if you're not doing that, you're doing something else. And one of the things we're hoping to do at Killarney is to build a spinning and drifting facility in the not too distant future, so that we can build the motorsport facility even wider and bigger, and be more inclusive, because that's ultimately what's going to grow and ensure the survivability of the sport.
That sounds fantastic. Now, please, I'm going to put the shoe on the other foot. The last time you and Greg Thornton raced against each other was in Australia in a support race, Formula 5000s. He got the better of you there. Are you two facing up again this weekend?
Well, I like to think I've been elevated to different sets of responsibilities. But I remember he didn't finish the first race, which I did, and I'm not sure if he finished the second race, which I had a car land on my head, which probably explains many things. But so I think it probably honours are more or less even in terms of our finishing rate, at least. But Australia was an unbelievable experience. I mean, for me, it was a kind of a wing and a prayer and a band-aid and a couple of bits of rolls of duct tape for us to get a car which only really ran at Phillip Island for the first time in anger the weekend before the Aussie GP. And then to be in that field of all those snarling Formula 5000 machines in something that was so fundamentally dangerous, it took a fundamental lack of imagination to drive it, at least the thing I was driving. But I mean, really was an experience. And I think the thing that sticks in my mind, I don't know about Greg's memories of it, and he's more of a participant than I am in the international scene, but is, how different the world was in the 1970s and 1980s in terms of accessibility and the lack of commerciality. Whereas, today it's almost an impregnable fortress where virtually everything has become corporatized. And it was very noticeable at Albert Park that, the Formula 5000s were sort of not pushed off to one side, but were to one side. And the Formula One industry, runs entirely in its own bubble. Even then, pre-COVID, 10 years ago now that event was. And it's a very different atmosphere. And I think one of the big things that South African motorsport still has, and we don't realize it, is our accessibility. I mean, it's very unusual to wander through the paddock, sort of unmolested, unrestrained, having to deal with monosyllabic security guards, which is the kind of Formula One setup, to the South African, much more laid back environment, much more about the 70s, 80s, 60s even, in terms of the friendliness and fraternity of motorsport. And I think that's a unique selling feature for us as well. I'm not saying the Australians don't try hard, they do, but Formula One is its own machine. It's a fully fledged industry, and which is why it's so powerful and influential, and all credit to those who've created that. But we have something else to offer, and I think something different and quite fundamentally attractive.
Well, we certainly look forward to a fantastic show this weekend. Thank you to you and the team behind the scenes who makes this possible and brings us to Cape Town. I believe that it will enjoy great support. And, we've got a few more guests behind the scenes that we would like to
and thank you
touch
for your
base with.
time tonight under this tight schedule.
Yeah, the man is busy. Clint.
Of course. And we've been
will chat
bothering
to
him.
Hopefully he'll be around still so we can call him up a bit later again.
Yes,
But we've got another international driver here with us, Nick Adcock. Good evening. Great to have you on air finally.
Yes,
Hi,
good
Nick.
evening. Nice to see you, Patrick. We haven't actually met, as we were discussing on the phone. We chatted often, so good to see you.
Well, likewise. You are also, we can talk to you as an international driver these days. You spent most of your year overseas. I don't know whether it was because of COVID or whether you were actually busy racing.
Yeah, mainly racing. The last 2 seasons have been incredibly challenging in terms of travel. I left South Africa in April to get into Barcelona for the pre-ELMS, European Le Mans Series test. And then South Africa on the red list, it was very difficult to return. We managed to return in August. But yeah, I have business in Europe as well as racing. So we've been busy going between the UK and different European circuits. So yes, it's been fun. You always think we're at the end of this pandemic, and then suddenly they sort of give you another curveball. And here we are again. I'm due to go to Dubai in February for Asia Le Mans Series. So I'm not even thinking about that yet. I'm sure we'll make a plan. Last year, we went to Zambia for 2 weeks before we could hop into Dubai. But that's a whole different subject altogether.
Please, for the benefit of our viewers, put yourself in their picture or in their position. Tell us who's Nick Adcock and what have you been competing in lately?
Okay, so I'm English, as probably my accent gives away. I've lived here in Cape Town, one of the most beautiful, if not the most beautiful city in the world since 2009. When I came to South Africa, I'd raced years previously, very, very keen. I thought I'll give it a rest, and I'll take a few years seasons off, see if I can get out of my system. And then
No.
I went to Killarney and met Steve Humble. The next weekend I was in a race car, and I got more involved than I ever have been before. So we raced at Killarney. I'm Formula Supercar champion twice at Killarney, South African Endurance Series champion 3 times. And then as a one-off, last hurrah, because I'm quite old, I went to do Asia Le Mans in 2017-18, got involved in LMP3, and then I just cannot leave it alone. It's like a horrendous. Anybody on this podcast who races will know that this is a drug that once it's virtually impossible to give it up. And I'm hoping that one day it'll leave me. But I love it so much; it keeps me young. I've got this fantastic young teammate at this race this weekend, and Andrew, who is on this podcast. We'll be talking about shortly, and he's ever so quick. And you have to recognise that the age difference between us is a mere 36 years. But I still think I can. Never going to, but it's called reality. But yeah, it's a wonderful sport. I've got to say thanks to Dr. Greg Mills. What an eloquent, articulate man, doing such a great job for Killarney, which is the home of motorsport for a lot of us here in Cape Town. It's going to go from strength to strength. What he did at the 9 Hour last year was absolutely fantastic, and we're looking forward to another great race, which we hope we're getting more successful. I won it with Francis Carruthers in his Juno in 2015. We had a lovely run there. We had too many technical challenges last year, but yeah, this is our last race of 2021. So yeah, we've made a lot of arrangements. I'm only running one car. Poor Greg, he rolls out all these fantastic vehicles out of his. He must have a huge garage somewhere. I don't know. And a fantastic black book of contacts. I don't know how he knows all these people.
Well, we're happy that he does, because it makes Killarney a fabulous place this time of the year.
I do actually know, because when I did Asia Le Mans, Harrison Newey, who Adrian's son, was also in the same series, and we used to share a bus in China to the circuit. And so I met with Harrison and his father. Lovely people they are. But what you perhaps don't know is that Adrian Newey has a house in Camps Bay, which is about 1 kilometre that way from where I live. So because his partner, Mandy, is actually South African. So normally they'd be down here this time of year, but clearly he's got a good excuse this time. And I was chatting with Harrison the other day and asking if he was going to be down here, but unfortunately not. And obviously these new travel restrictions have kiboshed a lot of it. So yeah, I mean, again, thanks, Greg. You're doing such a great job, and I'm sure your ambitions are going to be realised.
Yeah, well, I think when we reach the stage where Adrian Newey decides to come to Killarney for the 9 Hour instead of fighting over a little trophy in Formula One, then we've succeeded.
Little trophy.
But Nick, you've got serious aspirations with your young teammate this weekend. You're not intending to run for second place.
No, look, we've put a lot of time into the car. It's, I think, one of the things that we do, and what you learn from the other high-profile series I'm involved in, like European Le Mans series, if you follow the life in schedule of the vehicle and you keep replacing the parts as the manufacturer deems it necessary, you will buy some reliability. And the tendency is, because we're 6,000 miles away from Europe and where these cars are built, sometimes we do a make do and mend operation. We can't turn up at a 9 Hour race without being fully prepared. We can have reliability issues that we had last year with a broken radiator. But we've built the car to last the 9 hours. We've got some great competition out there. It's about keeping it clean, not making contact with anyone else, keeping out the pits and keeping to our strategy. So, yeah, I think, and I've got some great drivers. I mean, Andrew is so quick. Dean is a great inventor, very experienced South African driver in Formula Ford. Polo's did a fantastic job last year. Michael Jensen, who's my teammate, very, very interesting man. Now, if you think I'm a petrol head, he got introduced to motor racing about 4 or 5 years ago and got bitten by the bug. So he now owns at least 2 LMP3s. He keeps buying them. And I think he's just about to buy another one as well. So he's flying in from Mozambique. I think he's Johannesburg now. But he's got a very large transport company in Mozambique, 1,100 trucks he runs up there.
Yeah.
So if he's not driving, he's on his phone or he's on his laptop. He's constantly working. And I introduced him to the European racing. We did Le Mans, Road to Mans support race. And he's never looked back. He is so keen on it all. He won't. He's got so much faster as the season's gone on, and he deserves great success. They had a very good finish the last race in Le Mans Cup at the end of last season. So yeah, he's a very good racer, and I think we're a formidable lineup. I think I'm probably the weakest link in it.
Well, I must say you've got a unique way of getting rid of the opposition, because if it wasn't for COVID, we would have had 2 very mean Janettas down here for the weekend.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned that Michael Jensen's investing in a lot of LMP3s, so it just looks better and better for a fantastic 9-hour next year, when all the international guests will hopefully be able to come to South Africa again.
Yes, absolutely. Look, we looked upon those Janettas. They're incredibly quick. They can lap Kalani in 107, maybe even quicker.
Sure.
When you've got all that traffic of 34 cars on the grid, that power and that advantage goes away, because if you hit slower cars in turns 3 and 4 at Kalani, you lose 3 or 4 seconds a lap. So your traffic management is more important than anything. So your raw power doesn't really help you. It's more looking far enough ahead, being savvy, making sure the guy in front seen you. People don't understand it in this sort of endurance racing. It's you're doing the thinking of someone else. The guy's ahead of you. He's driving at 10 tenths. He's driving the wheels of his car. It's not his job to look behind him. It's your job to be able to smoothly get past him. And that in this form of racing is one of the real skills.
It is a fantastic element of endurance racing, and I would say we have a little bit of a problem in the sense that spectators have become lazy. They want to see everything happen in front of them. All the action must be in front of them, and they must have an immediate result. Endurance racing is not like that. You've got to follow it, the build up to it. You've got to follow the race. You've got to follow every pit stop. Every movement is important in the race. And at the end of the day, you've got 2 results. You've got an overall result, and you've got an index of performance result. So it's actually far more interesting than people tend to think when they sit out there just watching cars circulating. Because they say after an hour, you don't know who the hell's leading and who's where. But that's not true. In the modern era, electronics makes it easy to follow. And I honestly believe that endurance racing is extremely interesting. I love it. I think it's a different game altogether.
Patrick, for the likes of you and I, I'm sure if we cut you, you'd bleed petrol in some form. We find it fascinating because we're so integral into it. We're looking at the timings. We know what the classes are, but the average person looking in, it does appear that it can be quite tedious. But for the real aficionados, it is fascinating. I'm sure we all watched the Bathurst 1000, where it's all about keeping on the lead lap, and you're not racing until the last 45 minutes, and then they're going hell for leather. Same happens in the Indy 500. It's about keeping clean till the end. I always say in this form of racing, if we can get to a situation where we've got a significant advantage, then we can not risk the car, cruise it, but then be ready. We've done lots of racing in South Africa with the Ligiers. And I've raced long endurance races where you are absolutely qualifying lap after qualifying lap, trying to catch somebody, trying to force them into making a mistake. Other times when you're just protecting the car and you're probably driving for the last hour or two, hearing all these horrible noises that you think the car's going to break on you, or you're nursing a problem which people don't realise that something might be going wrong with the car. We had a race a couple of years ago where one of the rear wheels kept coming loose, and we tightened the thing up with so tight. We said, if that goes loose again, we will not risk the car and not risk the driver. But fortunately, it never came loose again. So there's lots of elements to it, let alone your strategy, because we can run quite a long time on a tank of fuel. However, it'll run a lot longer if there's a long safety car. How long do you leave the driver in? Do you pitch short, fill it with fuel? Our car doesn't like being full of fuel. It's quite heavy because it's a July's car when you fill it full of fuel. So there's lots of things on the pit wall we talk about, lots of radio messages. So we have to remain quite fluid throughout the race. So for us, there's a hell of a lot going on in 9 hours. It's not as if like off he goes, we'll see you later. It's incredibly intense. And on Sunday, we shall all, the team and the drivers will all be exhausted, hopefully, and perhaps have the pleasure of seeing some silverware. Who knows?
Well, and of course, there's one little element you forgot about. When you've got all these thousands of plans in place, there's a little guy called Murphy.
Yeah.
And and he's always a pest on any event.
You're so right. What they can throw up, in this sort of racing, we often say expect the unexpected.
Absolutely. Nick, we'll chat to you, Nana, again. I'm just going to introduce your opposition for the weekend. I believe that Jackie Schechter and Henny Groenewald and Sarel van der Merwe have been promoted into the Janetta. And that should be quite a dice between the two of you. So good evening to you, Jackie. Welcome.
Thank you, Patrick, for having me here. It's so nice to be in Cape Town after being in Joburg for like a year, and perfect weather here, making me look forward to the 9-hour Cape Town Canary track in the Janetta GT3. I'm pretty excited for that because last year, I entered the longest race of my life, but had the shortest race of my life at the same time. So I'm having a for this time, have a good race, have a good time, learn how to do the endurance racing, and be sharing the car with Saul and Henny, and also maybe have some good race with Nick if we can.
Well, I was very disappointed on your behalf last year when the car broke down so early in the race. But that is motorsport. Things do go wrong.
Yes.
That's a sad reality of it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. The thing is, motor racing, sometimes it's a bit of like a game of luck. No matter how good you are, things can go your way or things can go against you. But like the Grand Prix with Formula One lately, you don't know what's going to happen. And so I'm glad this weekend the combination of the 9-hour and the North Grand Prix to see who won the Formula One championship. So I mean, anyway, I'm just grateful for Dr. Greg Mills to actually have me on board this year again. And also Kanani, obviously a track with a lot of history behind it, knowing with my dad and my uncle Jody racing there and doing really well there. And also the heritage with the Schechter name involved with South African Motorsport in the heart of motorsport of the 70s, so we had those famous times, and it's great to see Dr. Greg Mills actually try to continue that tradition to keep going forward with motorsport for Cape Town, South Africa as well, and also the Schechter name and the family.
Jackie, you take a bit of a pressure on yourself. You come. It's a famous name. There's no denying that. I think Sarel van der Merwe and the Schechter name is right up there as the possibly the best known names from South African motorsport. It's unfair to have you drive in the shadow of your uncle and your dad, who's a 6-time South African champion. You've the American side of motorsport has also played a role in your family. You did well. You won the Barber's Saab series in America, did you not?
The other thing is, even though I had the name on my shoulders and that, but it's actually quite nice to have the name. So I did not feel any pressure because all I wanted to do was make a name for myself. Yes, the name do help, but it's how you put your mind to it. So if you allow the pressure, the stress around you, then you won't do well. So basically, I just went out to try to make the name for myself, just the best of my ability. I had a great time, and I've won championships, I've won races internationally and locally, and I'm grateful for the experience. And also, I'm grateful for the people who have the trust in me to drive their cars because of my ability. Yes, the name to help, but the ability that they let me trust to drive their car, whether it's like Greg Moore, Ginetta, or the Papa Clock Racing Ferrari, their client Ferrari. I mean, anything like that, I'm grateful for the experience. So, the name doesn't really put pressure on me. I just want to have a good time and just enjoy life with motivating.
Sure.
Well, you are. I would still consider you a youngster in that car compared to Sarel or Sarel, but we do have a
Yeah.
youngster, a serious youngster who wants to
It's like,
obviously
double my age.
take on the likes of Jackie Schechter and Sarel van der Merwe. So we're going to have to speak to him quickly. Just hang on behind the scenes,
Okay.
but we would like to introduce Andrew Rackstraw. Hi,
Hi,
Andrew.
hi, Patrick. Hi, Clint.
Hi, Andrew.
Thank you for the patience behind the scenes, but well, now's your time. Now you can tell Jackie and Sarel you're coming for them.
I mean, that's the plan. You'll never know until the end of the day. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Andrew, there's many youngsters out there that's watching you now, and would love to stand in your shoes, going the places you have gone. Congratulations on a fantastic season and a championship. The world's an oyster for you. You want to go places in motorsport. What does the future hold for Andrew Rackstraw?
Yeah, it really has been amazing. Like Nick said, the bug really bit. Just for anyone in motor racing, I think everyone can agree, and that was for me 7 years ago, and it has never stopped. The only problem with me is my studies, as I'm studying at the moment, so I'm living almost two different lives. And yeah, I'm just taking every opportunity that I can with open arms and doing the best that I can. So for this weekend, controlling what I can, doing the job that's in hand for me. And yeah, the future, it's looking really exciting. I have an opportunity to go race in England next year in the Formula Ford series, which will be absolutely amazing. And I'll be racing a few races in Greg Mill's team, which is also an amazing opportunity. And yeah, you never know. I mean, this opportunity for the 9-hour arose only a couple of weeks ago. So everything is kind of, when an opportunity arises, you just go for it. And yeah, I mean, it's been amazing. Everything's gone quite quickly. As you said, I've had an amazing year. I think winning 11 out of the 12 races in the 1600 and winning the championship. And after that, everything kind of just snowballed, and I've been having an absolutely amazing time, loving life.
Put it into perspective for the viewers, please. You are a single seater expert. Now you're going into much heavier, bigger cars, and also a different challenge in endurance racing. You normally leave your brain in the pit lane and you go hell for leather for 10 or 15 laps to the checkered flag. Now you got to think of the whole team trying to get it home.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's so different to what I'm used to. I mean, it's 12 laps of absolutely, I don't know, balls to the wall. and doing the quickest lap every single lap. And endurance racing isn't that. I had the opportunity last year to get involved in my first endurance race in the Killarney 9 hour in Charles Rangi's Lamborghini GT3 car, which really introduced me to the endurance series. And ever after that day, every single day, I just could not get over how awesome endurance was and the different mentality that you need to have. And it's not only about being the quickest driver all the time. It's like Nick says, I think this grid, there's 50 other people racing with you, and you need to be aware of your surroundings. And it's also physically challenging. So that's a whole different mindset that you need to get over. And yeah, I mean, completely different, but I'm absolutely loving it. I really hope in the future that I can get myself into more endurance races. I'm sure I can make it happen. But yeah, I've absolutely loved it, and definitely something I want to do in the future, especially overseas.
Well, that sounds like great aspirations. But in the short term, we wish you everything of the best for this coming weekend. You've got as he just said, there's a 36 years age gap between the two of you. But he's going to do his best not to see you run away and finish 36 seconds ahead of him in his own car. So you're in for a great tussle there, and we wish you all the best for the weekend.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure,
well, hopefully this was the first time of many. We'd love to speak to Andrew Rackstraw again in the future, and we'll probably speak to him a little bit. Yeah, we'll probably speak to him a little bit later now. But now we've got Ollie Broom on. Ollie, hi. Good evening. Welcome to the Cape. I hope you had a safe trip coming down all the way from KwaZulu Natal.
Yes, the south coast, banana land, where all the bananas are. Yes,
you bring your surfboard with or not?
Sorry, just repeat that.
Did you bring your surfboard with or not?
No, I left the surfboard. I leave the surfboard. I normally use a boogie board.
Ollie, you've got an amazing collection of motor cars in the background as well. You couldn't bring all of them. You brought one very, very, very special car. Tell us all about it, please.
Yes, I brought the ex-Basil van Rooyen Ford Mustang. The last time it raced on the track was in 2008, when Derek van Black had that unfortunate accident and the vehicle landed up in the trees. I've since rebuilt the vehicle. I've raced it since 2017. And recently I raced the vehicle in Lorenzo Marques, Maputo. And it's this is, out of all my cars, my race cars, this is my favorite car to drive. And I'm super excited to be on this famous Killarney racetrack. But what I'll do is I'll just give you a little history about myself. I own East Coast Classics. We restore classic VW Combis, and we restore a couple of other Mustangs and classic cars. I've got a huge passion for race cars, and how it all started is I used to go around to the Transkei and I used to go look for old split-winner Combis, and then on a lucky break I went to Zimbabwe to visit some family members, and I came across a number of split-winner buses. And over the years I ended up buying 250 of these buses and imported them into South Africa. And along my travels, I came across some fantastic race cars, and that's where I found the Mark Briggs Superboss. Ended up buying all three of them. Unfortunately, one of them was too badly damaged, so we couldn't restore it. So out of the three Opel Superbosses, I managed to restore two. So I painted one in the original silver, which is the 92 colors, and then the other one I painted in the 1990 colors, which was the yellow. And then as we went along, I came across the BMW 325 IS that was raced by Tony Viana and Sean van der Linde. That was the factory BMW. And I've also come across, so those were the three main cars that I found in Zimbabwe. I've since then found the Jamil de Villiers Super Touring car that was raced in 1994 and 95, which we're restoring back into the original BP colours. I'm also in the process of restoring the Nick de Vol Super Touring car, which was built by Ray Malak from the UK, which has got the chromoly roll cage, and that will be restored to the original specifications, as with the Jan Speed motor from the 1993-94 season. I've also got a number of other grouping cars, which is the ex-Peter Lance Factory Uno Turbo, which it was raced in 1994 in the Sangyo colours. I drove the car this year at the Passion Speed. What a lovely car. It's in the hands of Peter Lance, and he's busy fine-tuning all the suspension, so next year we can be a little bit more competitive with the vehicle. So that's, I've got a couple of other race cars. I've got the Steve Wyndham Falcon that's in the background with the Nick Adcock race car that's on the screen. And yeah, that's my passion. So I'm super excited to be racing the Basil van Rooyen car. I've owned it for a number of years, did a major restoration on the vehicle. There was a lot of debate about the vehicle, that it had been rebodied, and I'd like to just thank Jannie van Aaswegen for clarifying the history on the vehicle, because he found the car in 1979 in a basement in Hillbrow. And then we had to do a full restoration after the major accident, after Derek van Black crashed the vehicle. And then we had to then do a lot of research into the history, sourcing all the original parts, the carburetors, the diff. Luckily, I managed to get most of the parts from Derek van Black. And then I've been racing it ever since, and I'm super excited to be here in Cape Town.
Well, we've got to add to it the fact that there's actually two brooms here, and it's not the sweeping type. You've got a brother that's driving another amazing little car that should be a threat to the leisure on the picture, and that is Oliver Broom. Do you actually become Josh Broom? Yeah. Do you become opposition on the weekend, or do you guys work together on a weekend?
Of course we work together. We're teammates, so we put together and we have to work together.
It must be fantastic to be in a family that's so involved in the sport as well. And we've just listened to the Schechter family, and there's so many, the Van der Lindes, there's so many you can mention. But it's awesome to see how we're so far removed from Europe, yet we've got a very, very strong motorsport presence in the world. If you look at the Dakar race and all the South Africans involved in that, even on a manufacturing side, it's hard to believe that in these tough economic times, South Africa seems to be doing better and better internationally.
Yeah, no, we haven't. You know what? We have to get through these hard times. And you know what? What better can you do than go race? You know, so we have to put it all aside and go and have fun, and that's what it's all about.
Absolutely, and that's the bottom line, is having fun. You all race to win, but the more importantly is you must enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah, well, Josh is going to have fun because he's also racing the Mustang. We've entered into two categories. I'm going to be racing it in the historics, and then Josh will be racing it in the V8 sports cars race. So we're going to both have fun in the Mustang.
Well, I hope you guys have great fun. It's fantastic to have you down here. But your next trip to Zimbabwe, you'll have to find an enormous transporter, because you're going to have to come down to Cape Town next year with at least 10 cars.
I normally take up at least 5 cars to the Passion Speed, which is normally every January, but we'll definitely next year make a plan and come down with a couple of more cars. I was trying to get the Chevy SS to come race as well, which Marcus Sullivan's been driving over the past couple of years, but next year we'll definitely make a plan and come with a couple of cars.
Fantastic. We're going to drop you into the background for a moment. We'll just see who else is still remaining, and we can just get some more input from the individuals still present with us. Byron, it's up to you. Yeah, whoever's remaining, let's have Jackie on again. Jackie, thank you for having your
Thank you
patience.
for having us.
Patient in the background.
Thank you.
All the best your side, and have a great
Jackie.
weekend.
Thank you.
And, have we still got Greg in the background, Byron? Well, both Gregs.
Yeah.
There we go.
Colin and Greg.
Yeah,
Colin, can you fit into the back seat of that Lola?
I got a chance to try the front seat. I prefer that.
I can I have never met a driver that's not a control freak. They don't make good passengers ever.
Exactly, and yeah, Greg and I both fly airplanes. We make terrible co-pilots as well. Yeah.
Greg,
the Greg's names are better.
The Lola's not here, but please tell us a little bit about that car.
Well, the Lola was an inspiration. A guy called Nick Squiggly-Figgle in the UK, he took the concept of the 5000 192 and unpicked it, put 18 inches into it, shrunk the fuel tank basically to a very short 10-lap fuel tank, and widened it slightly so the legs of the passenger can go down the side of the driver, as long as the driver hasn't got too much in the girth. And we've got a 5-litre Chevy that's been bored out to 6-litre with 48 downdrafts on it. And somewhere around about 600 horsepower. It's the people that have driven it and have been in the back, which is quite amazing, because we've had Prince Joachim of Denmark, we've had the Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand, we've had the Minister of Malta, we've had the Minister of Tourism of Malta, a lady in the car. We've had numerous people from all around the world who all, what I would call eye-opener trips. Is trying to encourage people into historic motorsport. It's trying to let people, I use the expression, get it. A lot of people don't actually get what it's all about. And if you don't smell it, you don't hear it, and you don't feel it, you never get it. So that's what that tool is for. And I take it around the world very much on an invitation basis. We've made a long-range fuel tank for it to go in the passenger seat behind me. And I was very fortunate to race with Kenny Smith in New Zealand in the Formula Libre races with him. And the two of us had a lot of fun out the front playing. He would overtake me, and every time there was a wiggly bit, and I would get him on the straights because of its pure grunt. But apart from that, it's not really a weapon made for racing. It's a weapon made for opening people's eyes to what our incredible sport is all about. And as Greg Mills said earlier, it's a growing market. Every single day, another car becomes closer to being historic. And we're very, very fortunate. And I believe we need to feed at the bottom, because a lot of us are getting quite long in the tooth. And it's something that was mentioned, something that is encouraged by the Masters FIA championships around the world, whether it be in sports cars, F1, or now the LMP series, is that we encourage the punters, the public, to come and walk around the pits and the garages. My personal team, THR, if we see a child who is looking at a car in any way, we encourage the mum and dad to say, yeah, of course they can sit in the car, because you feed the seeds, they grow into big trees.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If I take what Greg Mills had to say now about Kalani and the future of the circuit, and also what the growth in historic racing, I threw a rock into this now, but I would love to see it grow to something bigger, and hopefully we will eventually see you guys as historic Formula One racers visit South Africa. Is that an impossible dream, or would something like that be possible somewhere in the future?
I've spoken to Ron Maiden many times about us traveling to different locations in the world. And the Masters F1 Championship is run by Ron Maiden and his organization Masters, and they do a really good job. It doesn't matter how you look at it. Yes, they are a commercial enterprise. And yes, we, the owners, and we, the drivers, pay substantial entry fees. It's not the entry fee. For example, we go to a thing called Passion for Noise. And we've been a couple of times now, and it's sponsored by Richard Milne out to Suzuka in Japan. And cars go from the west coast of America, cars goes from the east coast of America, and cars go from Europe. Now, it's to take an F1 car from, let's say, a base in the UK. You've got the logistics of the following. You've got the car to move. You've got the driver to move and his entourage, which normally involves the lady wife or whoever. And you've got his at least one, if not two mechanics. So if the driver is asked to pay for the car, if the driver is asked to pay for his team to move from UK, let's say, to Suzuka, those are already quite substantial bills when you cover airfares and you cover hotels and everything else. What makes the difference is when a local sponsor says, we will ship the cars. Another, for example, was we did Singapore a few years ago, and Singapore Airlines flew the cars for us. Singapore Airlines arranged hotel accommodation. Now, those are two things that are major expenses. Our race weekends end up in real money somewhere between 10 and 20,000 pounds UK. That's just what it costs. And that's when we're in UK or in Europe. If we start talking about going to the USA, going to Japan, coming to South Africa, it's the transport that's the killer. And locally, and this is the thing I got involved in assisting at the Grand Prix of Valletta, which is in Malta. And I managed to persuade the local Maltese club to provide accommodation for the driver, the driver's spouse, partner, whatever, and two mechanics per car. I then managed to persuade a Malta transport company to arrange freight ferry from Venice down to Malta on a ship for free for Arctics. I then managed to persuade a company in the UK to provide Arctics and drivers at cost to drive across Europe, across the north of Italy, to put them on the ferry. The whole thing went from a very expensive operation to something where everybody took the pain together. And the local tourist office, and that's why we had the Minister of Tourism in the back of the two-seater, by them arranging the hotels, them arranging various different restaurants, not every day and not every meal, but some meals, them arranging packed lunches for the mechanics actually at the track around the old city of Valletta, made huge differences to the viability of coming. And I know from Ron Maiden has said that if somebody could assist in our cars getting to South Africa, he would definitely look at, and has looked at in the past, bringing the cars down. Because, I mean, 1983 and 1981, when my car in particular raced up in Johannesburg at Kyalami, it would be wonderful to bring back the real F1 cars of that period. On top of, we were here a few years ago with the HGPCA, with the early cars from the 60s. So it can be done. And if people can help in various different ways, I'm sure you could have a very good traveling circus come and give back something to everybody.
Well, I sincerely hope the right person is listening on the other side of this show tonight, and something comes of this. Colin, so are you investing in a historic Formula One car?
I'm missing the camera. Let me find you. The phone's calling me. Hopefully I don't.
Minor technical issue.
Hopefully I don't. There we go. We're back.
There we go.
We want a power bank to the phone. Look,
the early Formula One cars ran with Alfa Romeos.
When I first raced Historic Masters with Greg over in Zandvoort some years ago, we met Ron Maiden, a wonderful guy, and he was really adamant that they wanted the Masters series to come to South Africa, and he would waiver all fees if they could come up to an arrangement to ship the cars and put up accommodation for the cars. Of course, when Kyle Army then got its B grade license, it was a perfect opportunity to bring them here, but it hasn't happened yet. And I think the clever people that can balance checkbooks must help to make it. There's definitely a will to do it, but people also need to realize that. Greg's very modest. The people running these Cosworth engine cars, the cost of running a Cosworth engine is about £180 per kilometre.
Sure.
So it's convert that to rands and you can drink a lot of wine.
Well, at least we have enough wine to keep them happy once they see the cost factor. They can drown in the wine. But no, seriously, let's hope that somebody that can balance those checkbooks are listening tonight. I sincerely hope that somewhere in the future, and not too distant future, we'll see, well, not just Greg visiting South Africa, but more of the people from that side coming back here. We had marvelous series with David Piper all these years, and it'd be fantastic to see something like that happen with the single-seaters and Formula One cars as well.
Look, Greg was a regular visitor to South Africa.
Yes.
He lives out in Amarnes half the time, and what he failed to mention in his two-seater Formula 5000 is that Swartkopse took his mother-in-law for a spin in the back. And
I open it too.
I'm not going to ask what the end result was of that.
when she found out, it was not nearly as scary as driving on the road.
Is she still speaking to you, Greg?
Unfortunately, yes. Sorry.
Well, I get the impression that at least your cars are well prepared, Colin, because you're willing to spend an hour on the show with us tonight. So you don't have much work to do tomorrow except get in and go for it.
Both my daughters at the track busy changing gearboxes now. We're just having a beer fight. I think Neil alluded to it. You can prepare as best as you can, but Murphy arrives, and Murphy's an optimist in moderating terms.
Well, I can only thank you for your time tonight. It has been an absolute pleasure meeting you two, and may the Formula One element continue to grow. And okay, I'm gonna put the shoe on your foot now. Colin, who do you say is going to be Formula One world champion?
Oh.
I think it's 50-50. How's that for fences?
Are you a lawyer or something?
No, but I'll drink Red Bull,
Let's see if Greg can come up with a more definitive answer. He's an expert in Formula One.
Oh, I think that's very unfair because you've got your heart, you've got your head. I love the enthusiasm of Max. I love the what seems to be out of control, wild passion to win at all costs. Yet you look at Lewis and you have to remember he's done it 7 times. To stop him and the steamroll machine, the roller machine of Mercedes, I think it's a far reach. And I hope that Red Bull and Max can get there, but I think it takes a lot to beat Mercedes.
Absolutely, I cannot but agree with that. It would, however, still be interesting to see what happens this weekend. Like as you said, heart and common sense is 2 different things. But there's nothing like a good fighter on the circuit. So let's see. I'm for Max this weekend, I must admit.
I'm going to start with this one. It's been a long week.
But thank you for your time, gentlemen. I look forward to meeting you at the circuit, and may you have a fantastic race meeting. And enjoy it so much that you want to keep on coming back. And It's a driver's circuit, Colin. So please, next time bring the Alpha.
I knew that was going to come.
Yeah, the Alpha's going to come back, definitely. Yeah, we get Chloe to drive it next time. Then,
Yeah. No, thank you. It was a very insightful discussion, and I think a lot of people has learned a lot about the sport, and definitely you need to come back because it gives us a lot of insight also to history. So thank you to Patrick and to the team behind the scenes also. And we have some.
We're going to have to pass the buck here, Clint. We're going to have to get Nick back if he's still in the background. As an international driver, he's going to have to give us his opinion. Come on, Nick.
On Sunday.
Put your foot in it.
Well, I'm with Greg a little bit there. If Lewis, if he can do 8 world titles, that'll be something that will mark him out as one of the world's greats for all time, and I think he's deserving of that. Max is very exciting. He's in a position where he's got nothing to lose. I mean, he could do an Ayrton Senna or a Michael Schumacher and take Lewis out and he'll win the championship. So I hope it doesn't. I hope the best man wins. I hope we have a clean fight. But it could all end at the first corner. It's going to be perhaps an anticlimax, Clint and Patrick. Before. So I think the momentum's definitely with Lewis Hamilton. They used to say about Nigel Mansell. I think it was his team manager. He's a great guy until he took his helmet off. And we'll feel like that about Lewis Hamilton times. I love his driving. I don't like his opinions, but he's been masterful. And he only seemed to be in Formula One. We were talking about age earlier for 5 minutes. I mean, he's reaching the end of his career. When did he debut? 2006.
Yeah.
What a driver! And Max, what an exciting talent. 24 years old. He could do 9 championships in his time. So as I say, let the best man win. It's a good race.
He certainly matured a lot in this year. He's a serious threat to Mercedes. Red Bull has been a serious threat to Mercedes, but they still seem to be the most balanced team of the two. But it's great. It's not the boring routine of just watching Lewis cruising to another championship. This year, he's really facing a serious threat. And going into the final race on exactly the same points can only be good for the sport, irrespective of who you support.
And I've heard so many people that Drive to Survive has encapsulated so many new spectators into the sport. It was an absolute masterstroke to make that program, and it's as you say, it's just getting more and more interest and traction. When we've had such a fantastic season, I can't remember a season like it. Can you?
No, certainly not.
Not for a long time.
But we'll leave you to focus on your own challenges this weekend. I think there's a couple of guys that want to knock you off that perch as well this weekend. But that's motorsport. If it wasn't a challenge, you wouldn't be doing it.
Absolutely. Look forward to seeing you at the trackside. Thank you, Clint. Nice to meet you. And
likewise.
Do it again soon.
Thank you. And hopefully we've still got Andrew in the background. Sorry, Andrew. You might be the youngest, but we're going to put you on the spot. You're gonna.
Andrew's on the team orders. He's on the team orders.
Are you supporting Youth of Wisdom here?
Clint will know. I had this discussion earlier on today, this morning at karting with Claudio, my driving coach, and Tristan. And Clint will know in karting, the debates get extremely heated and ended in a few tears here and there.
I've opted out.
I've to tread very, very carefully, but I love both drivers a lot and what they've brought to the fans. As Nick said, I don't think we have seen a race, a championship this exciting for a very, very long time. I do think Max has a lot more raw. I love his raw talent and his raw driving ability that he has. And Lewis, on the other hand, I think thinks a lot more mentally during a race and thinks a lot more strategically than Max using his experience. And yeah, I personally think, which I know will get me into a lot of trouble, but I think Lewis will win this championship purely by using his brains to outsmart Max. Because I know Max will do everything in his power, overtake Hamilton over his head, left, right, cutting anything he can do, he will win. I think that's Max, and I think that's why people absolutely love Max. I don't hold anything against him, and I think both drivers have such different techniques that they bring to the table, which creates such an amazing race and championship. But I will stand by my statement and say Lewis will win this. But I think there's a very, very bright future for Max as well. And yeah, I think Max does take over from his father, though. And when his father used to race, I think you can see a lot of similarities between the two. So yeah, I said it. I'm going to get in lots of trouble.
You have just been deleted of a few groups.
My phone's already buzzing. I can see it. And I know my girlfriend's going to absolutely kill me because she really hates this. So I think I'm in the dog box for quite a while with a few people.
Andrew, that's the beauty about the sport. You've got to support somebody and you've got to be against somebody.
Exactly.
But there's no need for it not to be in a good sportsman-like manner. So we'll give credit where it's due. Both of them deserve a lot of credit for making this a fantastic Formula One season. For first time in many years, I'll be honest and say that I've taken an interest in Formula One again. Simply because it's not a boring domination of one team, one driver. And if you look at the manufacturers in general, there's quite a few teams stepping up to the plate these days. And hopefully in the new year, with the new rules and everything, we'll see 5-6 manufacturers going for the championship, which is exactly what you want.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I think I remember I used to watch the first 10 laps of Formula One and then fall asleep, and I would wake up for the last 10. And that's just how Formula One was. I still absolutely loved it. But I mean, these last few races, I've watched every single lap. And yeah, my eyes were just glued to the TV. If anyone disturbed me, there was big trouble. Like you said, Patrick, I think with the new rules coming into 2022, I think with less downforce and people being able to follow each other more closely, I think is going to have a major impact of the quality of racing that will be seen next year. And yeah, I really look forward to it. I think it will be a lot closer than it's ever been. And I don't think it will be only two people fighting for the championship next year, definitely. And I mean, all the seat changes with George Russell going to Mercedes, that's extremely exciting. I can't wait to see what he does compared to Lewis. And yeah, I think it's just exciting in general and for motorsport all over.
Well, there's a topic for another day, and that is the length of races. If you look at it in South Africa as well, in the golden era of domestic Formula One in South Africa, they used to do 40, 50 lap races, which tended to have that boring effect if cars dropped out, that type of thing. But it also brings an element of you got to think about your race when you go racing when it's a longer event. Should South Africa races all be sprint races or should be longer? There's something we can debate at another time. But the element I want to touch on is you said no passing, but nobody told Vettel and Alonso that this year. The two old dogs are the... Now, where do you draw the line now?
Raikkonen, Alonso and Vettel, they have, I think, if I'm not wrong, Vettel has the most overtakes.
Yeah. It's
I
Vettel,
mean,
Alonso, and I think Raikkonen. So
all the altarpiece.
these youngsters should come and learn from the old guys,
Yeah.
man.
Agreed.
Okay. And it's Raikkonen's last event this Sunday, right? So,
Absolutely. He will be
yeah,
missed.
he's gonna have a,
I love his mentality. It's such a different characteristic than all the other drivers, and it's quite refreshing to the sport. I mean, even as he said, how did he think of the last race and the new track? And he said, it doesn't bother me. I'm not here next year. So I like his mentality and his view on racing, and yeah.
There's another topic we can discuss at a later stage, and you can speak to Claudia about, and that is the characters in the sport. It's so
Yeah.
important to have the characters in the sport. You have to have a Sarel van der Merwe that rubs up everybody's feathers, and have a rumble with Ian Schechter in Yuxkay occasionally, just to keep the interest going. You need to have a Tony Viana or a Nico Bianco, or those were true characters in South African motorsport, and it tended to disappear with a corporate element taking over. But I wish the people would realize that you need people to identify with people. You need the fans to go back and support a driver, then they'll support the manufacturer. Well, that's my opinion in any case, but that's a topic for another time. We're running out of time. Thank you for being on the show tonight. Everybody in the background, thank you for joining us.
thank you very much.
I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I believe this weekend will be a great race. Thanks to Gunther Trotsky and Dr. Greg Mills for putting up a fabulous show at Killarney. We'll certainly catch up again and discuss this at a later stage again, Clint.
No, for sure. So, as I said earlier, tonight was very insightful. I thoroughly enjoyed the historic cars. I was earlier just Googling all these historic cars, and it's really interesting, right? It's a total different world out there. So, thank you very much for everybody that has joined us for this evening, and we see you in another 2 weeks' time.
Thank you, Byron, in the background, for your patience there. We kept you busy tonight, but some fabulous guests tonight, and we wish everybody a great weekend. See you at Killarney this weekend.
And congratulations to Byron and his wife also on the marriage.
How can I forget? How can I forget?
Patrick,
We must
naughty.
mention that. Congratulations, Byron. Wish you everything of the best for the future. And of course, we forgot one little element as well. We have somebody supporting the program tonight, if I'm not mistaken, Clint.
Yes, so I was just waiting for Byron to put up the little banner. And then thank you to this company that is supporting us for this evening and made it possible for this event. So thank you very much.
Clint, enjoy the studies. We'll speak in 2 weeks.
Yeah, thanks. See you guys. Okay, ciao.